views and comments of the hosts and guests are not necessarily those of the station.
Hello, Philippines. This is LeCain with World News Jam. We bring you the most interesting stories from around the world each week. We just don't give you the news, but we tell you the story behind the news, as well as read and answer your questions in an entertaining and easy to understand way. So please join us on DZRJ 810 AM Radio Bandito TV and get yourself updated with all the interesting news of the week from around the world right here on DZRJ's World News Jam.
Watch and listen to World News Jam, Saturdays, 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. Airing on Sky Cable Channel 224 and on all DTT boxes. Simulcasting online on Facebook and YouTube. Listen and watch on your mobile devices. Just search DZRJ Radio Bandito.
Hello, Philippines, and welcome to the World News Jam right here on DZRJ Radio and Radio Bandito TV. We're right here in Manila. My name is LeCain, and it's almost Christmas. Just 4 more days until we don't have to listen to Mariah Carey anymore. Actually, I don't mind that song that much. I just need to limit it sometimes on the mall speakers, maybe a little bit more of that George Michael. You know, now here on the show, we generally discuss stories going on around the world, interesting stuff that happened this week. We will talk about what's going on. For instance, we will discuss the shootings in Wisconsin, that crazy challenge that Putin made to Zelensky. Is Elon Musk starting to overshadow Trump? And what's he really after? Of course, and much more. But first off, you know, I know Christmas time here in the Philippines is big. Lots of parties, lots of eating. Here, lechon is a big tradition. In the U.S., it's either ham or turkey. But a lot of traditional things are going by the wayside. I was reading this survey that they put out in the United States. As many as 44% would rather have pizza for Christmas, 33% tacos, and 34% said they would rather have Chinese takeout. Also, interestingly enough, 47% of people said that they would rather spend the entire Christmas day in their pajamas. But honestly, one of the big changes I'm seeing in Christmas this year is a change in the weather. Is climate change affecting our Christmas? First thing, in the Philippines, typhoons are becoming a Christmas tradition. New study says that typhoons around this time are up 210% in the Philippines. In fact, there's an article I read that President Marcos says that maybe we should donate some of the money for those lavish Christmas parties to people affected by the storms. But looking around the world, white Christmases are starting to disappear. In 2024, snowfall actually hit a record low around the world, seeing as 2024 is going to be the warmest year on record. In the Arctic, the multi-year ice disappeared and didn't return. That 7 to 10 year ice is becoming the 1 to 3 year ice. In fact, Arctic is now 4 months out of the year is becoming ice-free. Another Christmas tradition is ice skating. Ice is freezing in a different way now. It's more white ice than black ice being more solid for ice skating. Ski slopes are green more months now than they were 10 years ago. Ski slopes in Europe are having to close, and in Australia the ski season will be halved by 2050. Another interesting fact is that Christmas trees are turning from green to brown before the Christmas season even starts. Because of these extreme changes in climate, evergreen trees are not staying green long enough to make it to Christmas. And what about Christmas treats? Places like Ghana can't produce the same amount of cocoa beans as they have in the past which is putting chocolate up 138%. So Christmas traditions are changing around the world a bit, or a lot, depending on where you are and what you're used to Christmas being. But here in the Philippines, one thing is apparent. Every Christmas is full of happiness and cheer, no matter what the situation. And that's why there's this story I want to tell, which is, it's sad at first, but it gets better at the end. It ends up kind of cheerful. Although most of you probably already know this story, I've been surprised this week of how many people didn't know the entire story. Now, the story begins back in April 2010. Mary Jane, like many Filipinos, was looking to get a job overseas to help take care of her young children. At that time, one of the best ways to get a job overseas was to pay money to a recruiter to get that job. So she paid her friend and god sister, 𝗪cie𝗿𝗀𝗱, 20,000 pesos plus a motorcycle plus a phone to set up a job for her in Malaysia. But upon arriving in Malaysia, she was told that the job there was already gone. But Maria said not to worry. She already had another job lined up for her in Indonesia. Mary Jane had only shown up with 2 pairs of jeans and a couple of t-shirts, so Maria took her shopping so she should have some clothes. Now, all those extra clothes would not fit in her backpack, so Maria also gave her a suitcase to use and introduced her to an African man named Ike, who gave her a plane ticket and a cell phone to use to call the Indonesian contact when she got there. When she arrived in Indonesia, they saw something weird on the scanner. You know, when they put the suitcase through. So they took everything out of the suitcase and scanned it again, and something was hidden in the panels of the suitcase. It was 5.7 pounds of heroin. She was immediately arrested. Her family back in the Philippines went to see her friend Maria to find out how this could have happened, knowing Mary Jane was not involved in drugs in any way. Maria said they should not contact Indonesia or tell the authorities anything, or the drug organization who set the whole thing up would seek revenge on her and her family. Of course, the family did not listen and went to Manila to file a complaint with NBI, but NBI said without evidence, well, there's nothing they could do. Mary Jane's trial happened soon after. Her attorney had little to no experience, and the interpreter did not speak Tagalog, only English, which Mary Jane didn't really speak much of. So Mary Jane never completely understood what was happening to her. The judge asked her if she regretted bringing drugs into the country. Of course, Mary Jane didn't understand, most likely thinking the question was, did you bring drugs into the country? And her answer was no. She was found guilty. Could not use the defense that she could not understand the proceedings. At first, she was sentenced to life imprisonment, but then another judge changed the sentence to death. When the judge read the sentence to Mary Jane, of course, she had no idea she was being sentenced to death. Only later did she find out the information. 5 years later, she wrote to the president of the Philippines asking for help explaining what had happened to her and how she was duped into carrying this suitcase. She was scheduled to be executed that same month along with 9 others from different countries. Those people were executed. However, the god sister came forward at the last minute, confessed that she was getting death threats from the group that set the whole thing up. Mary Jane had a meeting with her children in which she told them, "Don't think I died for doing something wrong. Be proud of your mother because she died owning up to the sins of others." The prison guards were so taken by the scene that they broke down in tears. In lieu of this confession of Mary Jane's god sister, the president of the Philippines, Aquino, he made a call to the foreign minister of Indonesia just hours before the execution was supposed to happen. He asked for a stay of the execution so that Maria and Ike the African could face charges of human trafficking in the Philippines. Also illegal recruiting and estafa, among other things. There was a stay given to her execution just after 11 p.m. Her execution was set for 12:35 a.m. Just a month after that, Mary Jane's children and the father were put into protective custody under the Witness Protection Program, just in case. Then, 8 years later, President Marcos asked President Joko Widodo for clemency for Mary Jane and that she be released into the custody of the Philippines where she could serve out her life sentence. A year later, the president of Indonesia assured the Philippine president that he would look into the matter. And that was January 2024. In November 2024, Mary Jane was set to be transferred to a Filipino prison in order to serve out the rest of her sentence and possibly be granted a pardon. Then, on December 18th, 15 years after being arrested, Mary Jane was back in the Philippines. She is currently in the women's prison in Mandaluyong, waiting to see if maybe she'll get a Christmas pardon. As far as her god sister, it was discovered that she had done this to other women, promising work in Thailand and then diverting them to Hong Kong with a free piece of luggage. That woman that she sent to Hong Kong was also arrested in Hong Kong for drug smuggling, 800 grams of heroin. Turns out this woman, Maria, she was working for a Malaysian-based West African drug trafficking organization. Her job was to recruit Filipinos for work, but in reality to be used as unsuspecting drug mules. Turns out she was a drug mule herself before being promoted to a recruiter for the African drug syndicate. She pleaded not guilty and blamed the whole thing on her boyfriend and his partner, saying she was tricked. She and the boyfriend were both found guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment. Sometimes it's hard to understand human trafficking until you hear an entire story. Now, I have left out many details of this story, but I guess you get the gist of it. People desperate for work, thinking all about that money they're going to make. But if it's too good to be true, usually that's because it is. In this case, what appears to be a completely innocent woman was just an hour away from losing her life. But all the pieces fell into place at the last hour. Now Mary Jane may have a chance at living a life again, to make up for lost time with her family that has stayed by her side through her long ordeal. I know many of you already know this story, but I just like telling this story of a woman and her family and how they never gave up. This is LeCain on the World News Jam on DZRJ Radio. Merry Christmas, everyone out there. 426. Now, what does that number mean? It's the number of school shootings since that one that really started it all. The Columbine High School shooting back in 1999, where Eric Harrison and Dylan Klebold started the trend that has continued to grow and grow, killing your classmates. Those two killed 12 students and one teacher before killing themselves. That doesn't count all the students injured or the ones that committed suicide after that shooting. Now, the theory is that the boys were outcasts and bullied in school, and this was not fake. They truly were bullied in school. In some respects, the boys became heroes to some that have thought of committing murder, but just never had the courage to do it. And this is where we start our story. Ever since Eric and Dylan decided to really do it, other white men with military-style weapons, taking that leap from acting crazy to being crazy, been a rash of those killings growing young students killing their classmates. It's been building over the past 20 years. In fact, it's so common that I don't even report sometimes when it happens. But then there was this other one. Same type of killing in a school with an easily acquired gun. But this time, it was a young white girl. 𝗪cie𝗿𝗋𝗀, 15-year-old girl from a private Christian school in Wisconsin. I don't think I have ever reported on a school shooting that involved a girl. She was a bit young, 15 years old. Unlike many school shooters who are usually 18, bought the guns themselves very easily, which of course, buying a gun is easy in the United States. This was not an unexperienced shooter. There were videos of her going to the shooting range with her father. So she was trained with a firearm. Also, this was Wisconsin, which is very low in the scheme of things as far as school shootings. Maybe only 8 out of nearly 500 in the U.S. are in Wisconsin. By the way, school shootings in the U.S. still the #1 killer of teenagers. But much of the other usual characterizations fit. She was really quiet. She didn't really have a lot of friends. She seemed very lonely. But she did have one special online guy friend named 𝗪cie𝗿𝗋𝗀, a 20-year-old from California. He and Samantha had planned to do a mass shooting together. The FBI picked up this guy and questioned him. It seems that he promised he would arm himself with explosives and guns and he would target a government building, but he actually never participated in any shooting. Police have since taken away all his guns. But one thing is coming clear now is that last week she planned this shooting. Police found writings by her that shows that she was planning to do this. And it seems that she had aligned herself with these neo-Nazi groups on the web. There's also that video of her and her father at the shooting range. She was wearing a shirt from the band 𝗡𝗲𝗄, the German band, the exact same shirt worn by Eric Harris at the Columbine shooting in 1999. The band's name means no pity for the majority. The band was posted in a TikTok video when a 17-year-old shot up the Iowa high school, killing a 6th grader. Many are now believing that this girl, she may have idolized some of these shooters, especially some of these ones that were very famous. As police pour through the social media of her, looking for any clues as to why a young girl going to a Christian school would do something like this. There were 6 people injured due to gunshot wounds, 3 people dead, teacher who was 42, a student who was 14, and the shooter herself. Supposedly, she carried 2 guns to the school that day, but where did a 15-year-old get all those guns? Did they belong to her parents? These days, when a child kills someone with a gun owned by the parents can be charged. And this has led to the usual outrage that always comes with these types of incidences. At the vigil for those killed and those injured, one father said, "It's an epidemic. And I'm not a big believer in the thoughts and prayers crap. I don't think that works." He added, "We need action, legislation, and laws to make sure that guns don't get in the hands of people who don't have them." The President of the United States spoke out saying, from Newtown to Uvalde, Parkland, Madison, to so many other shootings that don't receive attention, it's unacceptable that we are unable to protect our children from this scourge of gun violence. It is true that Wisconsin has some of the most lax gun laws in the country when it comes to children. A child cannot legally own a gun in Wisconsin. However, you can legally teach your child to shoot a gun. So if your child finds your guns, then takes one of your guns, it's already loaded, well, firearms, easy access. Children that are under 14, it's a criminal act there. So if your child steals a gun, kills someone, well, you could go to jail for up to 9 months. Unlike in Michigan, where a teenager took his parents' gun and killed 4 students, the parents got 10 to 15 years for his murders. And of course, in the Appalachia High School killing where the father was indicted on murder charges, there the father allowed his son to access the firearms and was warned that his kid was unstable, and yet he did nothing. That case has really pushed the boundaries of who is responsible for your own children. That father was indicted on second-degree murder, even though he had not even fired a single shot. Unfortunately, with this latest case from last week, the young girl killed herself, so she will not go to trial. I guess the question is, if her father, who taught his daughter how to shoot, is he liable for anything here? Since they can't make gun laws limiting the access to handguns and rifles, I guess the next best thing to do would, just put your whole family in jail. Teach a lesson. Although that lesson, would always be a little bit too late. This is LeCain on the World News Jam on DZRJ Radio and Radio Bandito TV. So, what's happening in Syria? Let's recap what we know so far. There has been a 13-year civil war going on in Syria, the brutal regime of al-Bashar versus the rebels of the HTS. Now, in case you might not know, al-Bashar, as well, he's the son of Hafez al-Assad, part of the Ba'ath Party in Syria. Now, I actually remember that from back in the 70s because, it was the Ba'ath Party, which is kind of funny if you're 8 or 9 years old. But later, his son, Bashir al-Assad, took over and ran the country much like his father did, treating dissidents with death and imprisonment. But Bashir was actually quite a bit harsher even than his father. He used starvation as a weapon and deliberately bombed schools and hospitals knowing they had civilian children in them. In 2013, he used sarin gas on his own people, which is considered by the UN as a war crime. And by the way, 1,400 people died in that attack. But what he is most known for are the detention centers in which you would be taken if you spoke out against the regime. There were reports of inhuman conditions and torture. Most entered there could not speak because usually this is a one-way ticket. And once you went in, you never got out. Amnesty International reports that 13,000 people were hanged between 2011 and 2015 at just one of those prisons. Now, the rebels that oppose al-Bashir, well, they're not exactly good guys here either. They are made up of multiple factions, which by all intents and purposes hate each other, but they hate al-Assad even more than they hate each other. So they came together to fight him on the same side. The leader that had once been in Al-Qaeda, he was an apprentice of the future leader of ISIS, al-Baghdadi, which I'm sure you're very familiar with. But the leader of the HTS, his name is al-Jolani, he broke off from Al-Qaeda to fight against the Syrian government exclusively. But now this guy, al-Jolani, was fighting against Syria, but also was the enemy to the United States, several other places. who put a $10 million bounty on his head. But this guy is pretty clever. The rebel had a plan to go after Syria while its allies like Russia and Iran were dealing with, other disputes that they have. They launched a surprise attack against them in Aleppo, and even though the Russian jets targeted them, they were able to push forward into Hama and then Homs. This set them up for Damascus, the capital. Once they were in Damascus, the president and the ruling party, well, they escaped. Al-Bashir, he escaped to one of the only places that he could seek refuge, I guess, on planet Earth, Russia. Russia tried to help al-Assad with holding power, but this attack by the rebels, it was very sneaky. They haven't really tried to attack like this in the past. Usually it's small, low-level clashes. They decided that if they were ever going to make a play for the country, now was the time. Russia's fighting in Ukraine. Iran is occupied with Israel. This was the time, and it worked. This could have easily gone the other way and led to months-long clashes with the military, but instead the military only put up a small defense, and the HTS took the whole country in days. So, we're all caught up now. So, now what? What do we do now? Well, here's where things start to get complicated, because the leader of the HTS is now basically the leader of Syria, al-Jolani or al-Sharar, depending on who's addressing him. He is saying that the world should embrace the new Syria, that even though he was part of Al-Qaeda before, and his group HTS is largely considered a terrorist organization around the world, that he's really the good guy now. This is kind of sounding a little bit like Afghanistan, isn't it? Remember when the Taliban told us after they took over, how they weren't really that bad anymore and they should be considered more moderate. Remember how that turned out? Anyway, al-Sharar is saying that since the old regime is not completely out, that Western countries, they should drop sanctions on Syria. That they are not like Afghanistan. It's not a tribal mindset. Well, kind of. He said he believes that women should be able to go to school and that maybe alcohol is okay now. He said that he will have legal experts write up a constitution. So no matter who the next president is, he will have to follow it. But as it stands, many Syrians don't believe this guy. Many Western countries are very worried to see this guy make up the laws. But the people are the ones that are worried the most. There are those who still remember waking up in the middle of the night, someone shouting, "Chemical weapon attack, chemical weapon attack," soaking towels in the sink and covering their faces, running up the stairs of the building, knowing that the sarin gas is actually heavier than air, then getting to the roof and seeing who made it and who didn't. Are the mass graves just recently unearthed with more than 100,000 disappeared people due to the crackdown on anyone protesting the government. It's believed that this is just the tip of the iceberg. And even that regime is, even though they've been taken down and the HTS is taking control, that doesn't mean that all the violence is just going to end just like that. There are many factions in Syria now. There is, no al-Bashar Assad to worry about. But this opens a power vacuum into provincial parts of the country. There was a humanitarian crisis before the takeover, and now, that crisis is still going on. Estimated 330,000 people have been displaced since June 1st. This problem has not gone away. And the violence in the streets and the impunity of the police state, it's not going to change overnight. Right now, the prison is open. People have been let out. But the people that have been let out, it's the dissidences and the criminals. Families still search for missing loved ones that disappeared and were believed to have been in one of those prisons. We can't pretend what will happen in Syria. All we can do is hope that it won't end up being worse than it was before. And this is Eric LeCain on the World News Jam on DZRJ Radio and RJTV, Radio Bandito. This is our Christmas show. So let's move over to some crazy stuff going on in the Ukraine-Russian war. So, Russia sent a missile attack this week right into the capital of Kyiv. Several embassies got damaged, including offices of Albania, Argentina, Palestine, North Macedonia, Portugal, Montenegro. The Russians fired 5 ballistic missiles at Ukraine, of which Ukraine says they shot down all 5, also 40 UAVs and 20 drones. But as these things go, there's usual damage coming from the falling debris, and this could be pretty bad. But what's crazy is that it comes just one day after Vladimir Putin challenged Ukraine to a duel. And this is right at the end of his yearly conference. Right away, President Zelensky called Russian leader, and I'm quoting word for word, a dumbass. Putin said, let them propose some kind of technological experiment, a kind of high-tech duel of the 21st century, let's say. This is when Zelensky decided to hit him with that specific word that I just said. So Putin fired missiles right at the capital. Now, the Russian defense minister said it launched these missiles not as a part of the challenge of the duel, but as a retaliation of the attack on its chemical plant by the Ukrainians. That attack was carried out using American-made ATACMS missiles. Army Tactical Missile Systems, a group of supersonic ballistic missiles made by Lockheed Martin in the U.S. The defense minister said in response to the actions of the Kiev regime, as they call it, supported by Western curators, this morning a group of strike with long-range precision weapons was launched against the SBU command post, the Kiev Luke Design Bureau, which designs and manufactures those Neptune missile systems, Olka ground-based cruise missiles, and positions of the Patriot anti-aircraft missiles. He went on to say all targets were hit. So, somebody doesn't have their story straight here. But what stood out was the invitation to a duel by the president of Russia and the rather stingy reply of the Ukraine president. Putin went on to say in that speech that, quote, we are ready for such an experiment. In any case, we don't rule it out. We will conduct such an experiment, such a technological duel, see what happens. It's interesting. Actually, the actual quote from Zelensky was, people are dying and he thinks it's interesting? Dumbass. That's what he said. Putin went on to say, when everything is calm, measured, stable, you get bored. Stagnation. You need some action. As soon as the action starts, everything whizzes past your head, seconds. Bullets. Unfortunately, bullets are whistling now. Now, don't ask me to explain what he means. But during this marathon news conference on Thursday, Putin was asked about Donald Trump. They had not spoken to Trump in 4 years, which is in complete contrast to what Trump says, but that he was ready to talk to Trump. He said, you ask what we can offer or what I can offer to the newly elected President Trump, and we will meet. And a reporter asked Putin if Russia would be weaker negotiating from its position because of the recent setbacks in Syria and, of course, the battlefield in Ukraine. Putin replied, you said that this conversation will take place in a situation where I am at a weakened state, and you, those people who pay your salaries in the U.S., would very much like Russia to be in a weakened position. Here again, it's hard to tell what he's talking about. So this all comes after one of Russia's top generals was accused of using chemical weapons on the battlefield in Ukraine. Well, he was killed by a bomb attack in Moscow. The Russians blamed the Ukraine, and the Ukrainians replied, yes, we did it. We killed him. The Russian general headed the Russian radiological, biological, and chemical protection forces. He was killed by a remotely detonated bomb planted in an electric scooter that was placed outside of his apartment building. The assassination came one day after the Ukrainian prosecutor sentenced the general, who of course was not at the trial, of course, for using banned chemical weapons. During the Russian invasion, he did. Supposedly it was the SBU that carried out this attack. That's the Secret Service of Ukraine. A source in the Ukraine government said 𝗪ശ𝗿𝗱, that's the general, was a war criminal and absolutely a legitimate target. And he gave orders to use banned chemical substances against the Ukrainian military. Such an inglorious end awaits all those who killed Ukrainians. Retribution for war crimes is inevitable. There's a video of the bomb going off. You can see the scooter near the front of the building. And then the general and his assistant walk toward the car, and then there's this huge flash of white on the screen. The bomb that they found, they say, had 30 grams of TNT in it. This general was said to have used illegal chemicals in more than 4,800 cases since the war began, particularly grenades equipped with irritant chemical agents. 𝗪ശ𝗿𝗱𝗮, which affects the eyes, the skin, the throat, the lungs, manufactured for use as a tear gas during the trench warfare of World War I. It was banned in 1993 under the Chemical Weapons Convention, to which Russia was a signatory. This guy has been sanctioned by the U.S. and the U.K. as UK put it in for he was the guy, the deployment of barbaric chemical weapons in the Ukraine. And this is not the only time the Ukrainians have snuck up on one of these Russians and killed them in Russia. Last month, a senior Black Sea officer was supposedly, he was killed by this guy. Now, this last month, this officer down in Crimea was actually killed in a car bomb by the same group, the SBU. Now, the scooter explosion, they have a suspect now. He's Uzbekistani. Supposedly he was a recruit by the SBU to assassinate this Russian general, this 29-year-old. He was paid $100,000 US and promised a nice life in a European country if he was able to carry out this task, which he did. The suspect rented a car and fitted it with a camera to monitor it. Also, the footage was watched by the Ukrainians who were waiting for the right time. Then the Ukraine received a homemade explosive device, which he put on top of an electric scooter, which was then parked at the front door of the guy. Then the bomb was remotely detonated from the Ukraine. This is incredible. Now, this killing will not have a big impact on the war. However, it will send chills down the spines of some of those Russian elites, knowing that a Ukrainian might have an asset right there in Moscow watching you. This is LeCain on the World News Jam. Merry Christmas. The U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission, they report on radioactive materials and whether they are lost. And they said there are some lost in New Jersey. There was a shipping container that arrived at its destination and damaged, and it was empty, and it should have radioactive isotopes in it. The government has sent out drones in search of the missing radioactive material. Is this true? Well, it's kind of half true. There was some nuclear missing material. Well, there was. It's been found. But the drones were never used to look for it. But for some reason, someone is looking for something in New Jersey. Drones have been spotted appearing over New Jersey all over last week. Why has this made it into the international news? Well, it's because there have been 6,000 reports of drones flying over people's heads. And some of the drones are big, like really big. So people have been surmising that why there's so many drones flying around New Jersey. Of Of course, one of the top answers is these are really space aliens planning to take over the Garden State. Maybe it's Russians trying to create a panic. Or maybe it's the Chinese trying to create a panic. Maybe it's the CIA. Maybe it's the FBI running operations. But so far, the answers seem to be none of the above. The president has spoken out about this, saying that as far as he can tell, there is nothing nefarious going on here. Now, Donald Trump has suggested, hey, why don't we shoot the drones down? But of course, that would be illegal according to the FAA. You can't shoot down an object in the sky just because you don't know what it is. It could actually have a person in it, and that wouldn't be good. And also, if you hit a large drone, it must come down somewhere. And of course, if you shoot into the air, the bullet must come down somewhere. Now, when you see the videos of the drones, it does look kind of weird. In the video I saw, which was at night, you see around maybe 20, 30 drones flying all around at once in unison sometimes. Now, these drones, they're required by law to have strobe lights when flying at night and cannot go over 400 feet high. But in any case, they have since turned the New Jersey Police Command Center into a drone war room where they can monitor large drones in the air. But the issue is that sometimes, well, they just can't tell what it is. There's an instance of a police helicopter flying over a very large drone, and suddenly that drone turned off its lights. Another instance where a drone came face to face with a police drone and turned and ran like a robber. Now, the U.S. government had a committee meeting on this issue because it's fastly becoming a really big deal, all these drones. They said there is nothing nefarious here. Everybody loves to use that word, nefarious. They said it's not Russian, it's not Chinese, and it's not little green men. That's an actual quote. One thing they are saying is that many of these sightings are mistakes by the public. That if you look at the layout of the sky that you can see on several different apps that you can put on your phone, most of these sightings are actually planes. As there are about 1,000 planes in the sky at any given moment over New Jersey. But people have not been satisfied with these answers given by the government. One question being is, why did the U.S. government have a classified briefing if the drones are just hobbyists flying them around at night? So, for the next 30 days, the FAA has banned all flying of drones over many parts of New Jersey and New York. Of course, the problem being, if someone flies a drone over one of these places, what are the police going to do about it? Also, just to keep the peace, all drones flying over Trump's golf course in New Jersey have been banned. The FBI has also asked people not to point lasers at the drones that are flying overhead because it may be mistaken for a plane, and pointing a laser at a plane is illegal. So, this is the future of the air. In just the U.S. alone, there are millions of unlicensed drones being flown every day. And it's not only a way to see everything from above, but drones now have the ability to do things remotely. These days of privacy, you may not ever be able to be completely private. You can stay off social media, never vote, never order anything online, but can you stay away from drones flying over your house, watching your every move? And as technology grows, so does drones. They have drones now that can carry a person. It's not a helicopter, it's what they call it, an electric personal flying vehicle. And of course, there are military drones which have machine guns on board. How long before anyone can own one of those? Of course, very soon, you know that deliveries are all going to be made with drones. What if you need a rice cooker in 30 minutes? Once delivery starts with drones, how many more of these things are going to enter into the sky? And some of the drones are not that small. We still think of them as these small little handheld devices, but they're getting bigger and bigger and more powerful. They can lift things, they can stay in the air longer, and now they have multiple cameras and microphones. You know, someone out there has figured out how to put speakers on a drone, I'm sure. Right now, people are freaking out over a few hundred drones in the sky. What if years from now we look up and we see tens of thousands of drones in the sky, all buzzing around? How are we going to tell who's who? And who's going to be the first person to hack a flying drone? Like, I'm sure someone's not working on that right this very minute. I don't know what's flying over New Jersey right now, but I can sure see what's coming. We thought before there were so many cars. Soon we'll be saying, yeah, the traffic at 100 feet up, well, it's horrible. This is LeCain on the World News Jam on DZRJ Radio and Radio Bandito TV. Merry Christmas out there. Now, just a bit on what's happening in U.S. politics. As the year is coming to a close, the Trump transition team is getting ready to transition. Now, Trump has been very busy picking the leaders of his new administration. Now, if you've been watching some of those picks, they are scary. Some of those picks are funny. Some of those picks are scary funny. Putting a woman to head the Office of Intelligence, who at one time was on the terrorist watch list from the Office of Intelligence, or putting a guy to head the Department of Justice, who was at the same time being investigated by the Department of Justice for drug charges and paying a 17-year-old girl to cross state lines to have sex with him. Or maybe putting a guy in charge of the health department. Same health department that spent decades eradicating the U.S. of polio. That guy wants to ban the polio vaccine. What about making Herschel Walker, the football star, ambassador of the Bahamas? I mean, that's kind of funny and kind of scary. And what about Elon Musk? He's a guy that paid $250 million to get Trump elected. He's the same guy that bought Twitter, changed the name to X, and has allowed racist, violent groups to come back to Twitter and be free to say anything they like. In fact, seeing that TikTok is about to be banned in the U.S. in January unless there's a sale to a U.S. company, Elon Musk's name has been floating around as a possible new buyer for TikTok. Wouldn't that be something? Many are calling on Elon, they're calling him the new president of the U.S. because currently he seems to be making all the decisions of the upcoming administration. I mean, there's some big ones he's making. Who these decisions seem to always benefit? I would have to say Elon Musk. Think about helping Elon Musk. About 2 years ago, there was an announcement made by a major car company. That announcement was that you don't need to drive your car anymore, that your car from now on will drive you. This is when, of course, Tesla said that for anyone who had paid for the full package option deal, you can now upgrade your software so that your car can drive itself. Just a few hours after that new software went out into the new Tesla cars, a massive accident happened in San Francisco. Cars piled up on one time on top of the other, multiple injuries, traffic jams lasting for hours. In the video, you can see why this accident happened. The man in the front car just started using his new autopilot mode in Tesla, and for some reason it just slammed on the brakes, starting the crash. Another accident after that in which a car slammed into a fire truck at a high rate of speed, killing the person in that car. The driver of that car being the car itself. It was a Tesla. In North Carolina, a school bus was stopped and a kid was getting off the bus, and a Tesla in auto mode went around the bus and hit the child head on. In fact, most car crashes of those self-driving cars are Teslas, according to the U.S. Safety Commission. The reason they know this is because there was a law put in effect that car companies must report all accidents involving their auto-driving cars. Now, since the new Tesla autopilot was announced, there have been hundreds of crashes and dozens of deaths linked to it. There have been so many that they even are now facing a criminal probe. In fact, the federal investigation was put in motion just this past October to look into all the deaths caused by Tesla's autopilot. The investigation is based on data collected by this law that you must tell the government when your autopilot car has been in any kind of accident. As you can imagine, Tesla hates having to tell the government that their cars get into accidents and why they got into an accident. Now, the investigation started in October and has a new twist. It seems the Trump team now wants to scrap the car crash reporting rule. They want to drop all car crash reporting requirement laws for auto driving cars. Removing that crash disclosure provision would benefit Tesla because Tesla has the most crashes of any car that has an autopilot mode. Now, of course, in order for the Trump transition team to do this, they would need a reason to stop this rule that's in place, to stop something that would save people's lives. So their reason being that by gathering all this data, it's too much. They're saying the reason to stop this is it's just too much data. Did I mention that according to the data of the 40 of the 45 fatal car crashes through October, of those 45, 40 are Tesla. So I guess one of the questions many are asking is how much power is Elon Musk going to get for his $250 million? Right now in the U.S., they are doing as they always do, trying to figure out the budget for the next year. This is always in the news because if they don't get the budget, then there's a government shutdown. Remember this massive month-long shutdown that happened when Trump was president? We talked about it a lot here on the show. He wanted the money for the border wall in Mexico, and Congress refused that money. Something about Trump's promise that Mexico would pay for it. Anyway, eventually the budget got passed. But what chaos it started. This time around with the budget, the Republicans and the Democrats, they came to an agreement early. They were all about to sign the agreement. They were going to sign the budget this week, yesterday. But then Elon Musk told the Republicans, hey, don't sign this. In fact, he said that any Republicans that sign it, they will be voted out of office. Now, up to this point, no one really noticed the budget because everyone was in agreement on it. Trump had never even mentioned it because it was already a done deal. But now Elon Musk is telling Republicans, if you sign this bill, you will be voted out of office. The bill is due to be signed like now, like today, which is Friday in the United States. This is before the government completely runs out of money. Now, the funny, scary thing is that Trump just now said, yes, Republicans should not vote for this bill. Let the government shut down. So this leads everyone to question, is Trump getting his policies from Elon Musk's Twitter feed? What is Elon so mad in this bill? It's funding for the State Department's Global Engagement Center. Now, they are the group that deals with fighting foreign propaganda and misinformation. Musk is saying that they are going to be censoring people's right to free speech. But as we have said here on the show, there's a fine line between free speech and lying to try and turn your people against their own government. But what this does is put light on the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, who helped put this bill together in the first place. He's the one that got everyone to agree, or enough to agree. Before Elon came in with his guns blazing, his credibility is now at stake. Who holds the power in Congress, Mike Johnson and Republicans, or Elon Musk? Will the Republicans stop bowing to Trump and start bowing to Elon Musk? Here will be the first true test of that. Mike Johnson may be removed as Speaker of the House because of this. And who would take his place? Well, Senator Rand Paul has suggested that maybe Elon Musk should be the Speaker of the House. He's not kidding. But that's insane, right? As I've said before, I don't think Musk will last the first year. He's the rich version of Steve Bannon, who he didn't last a year in that last administration of Trump. The question is, can Trump allow Elon to stay in the spotlight for any length of time? Elon can never be president, and he was not born in the U.S. He can't run for major office in the White House because, well, the Democrats would shred him in the Senate confirmation hearings. Right now, the highest he can be, well, is having the president's ear. But how will Elon wield this new power he has? Will he burn out in just a few months? Or will he be the new president of the U.S., but just not have the title? This is Eric LeCain on the World News Jam on DZRJ Radio and Radio Bandito TV. Thank you so much for joining us this morning as we discuss interesting stories going on around the world. I wish everyone out there a very Merry Christmas, and you have a safe and happy holiday. We'll be back again next week for our final show of 2024, and hope you will join us here again on the World News Jam. So until then, happy holidays, and we will see you next time.
The views and comments of the hosts and guests are not necessarily those of the station.